This is what my Mormon grandmother thinks all horror movies are like. Hello and welcome to my review of the 2026 Faces of Death reimagining. This is a bit longer than my usual video because I want to get into the legacy this movie comes from. One, because I think it's important to acknowledge the legacy this quote-unquote franchise has, and two, the chronology of Mormon media over the last 50 years especially is a huge interest of mine. My interests are really bizarre, Outlast, Predator, the movies, the alien ones, not the current world events. I have to, differentiate the two, and morbid media. I don't know. I wish I could tell you. There are chapters below if you want to skip the history recap, go straight to the review, go right on ahead if you want to. If you're sticking around for the said history lesson, buckle in. As I said, this is a reimagining, or whatever term Randy from Scream wouldn't kick my ass over. The legacy behind Faces of Death traces back to 1978 with the very first film. There's a total of, I want to say, 6 of these movies I don't know anything about. The movies past the first one. I have seen the original one, I've seen this one. My knowledge is very limited. The legacy this movie has is generational, hence the tagline for this one being, quote unquote, every generation has the rite of passage. This is yours. From everything I've seen, the VHS of the original Faces of Death was found in video stores, often picked up by kids, teens, or unsuspecting adults under the assumption it's just another horror movie. Fun fact, little tangent, I did see the first, I think, 4 Faces of Death on VHS for like $1 each at a local bookstore like a year ago. I wish I got them purely for preservation's sake. I'm sure they're in a great home right now, but I really kind of wish I got them. I'm Gen Z, and I don't think my dad would have approved of this on our Blockbuster trips, and also I was not allowed to even watch SpongeBob, so I never had that experience, but this seems to be a staple among Gen X and millennial trauma. Now, what is the 1978 Faces of Death? It is a shockumentary also known as a Mondo film. Mondo film sprouted up around the 60s in Italy with the film Mondo Cane. It's disputed on if this was the official start of the format, but it did catapult the genre in a certain niche. Kind of like the whole found footage thing kind of rests on the Blair Witch Project, and then it goes back to the Cannibal Holocaust, and then maybe there's some movies before that. It's a whole thing. These movies often depict the greatest taboos in our society in very grueling ways. Substances, sex, death, crimes, anything and everything is on the table. From what I can tell, because I'm not watching these movies, I don't really want to. These movies are collections of scenes with a loose narrative and documentary style format, hence the term shockumentary. Take this all with a grain of salt. Again, I haven't seen any of these aside from the original Faces of Death, so I'm just going off of what I've read. They blend real and fictional elements together into something meant to disturb, to shock. It's been controversial from the start, whether it be nudity, racism, or actual footage of death. Circling back to Faces of Death, the solid majority of the footage in this film is staged with practical effects. Really good practical effects. There is some real footage in here. I will not list every single scene just to determine whether it's real or staged. This is just a brief throwback. This film is a collection of countless ways people and animals have died. It shows the barbarism, the sadism, the massacres, the cruelty, the many faces of death around the world. This is not to be confused with the Mondo film inspired by it about 15 years later, Traces of Death, which is almost entirely comprised of real footage, to my knowledge. Here's where some people might get confused. Holy shit, look at this clean segue. Especially when it comes to those unfamiliar with horror, Mondo films can be mixed up with found footage like Cloverfield, mockumentaries like Lake Mungo, extreme/exploitation, which I combine the two because they constantly overlap, like Gummo, the aforementioned Cannibal Holocaust, a Serbian film, Shoto Tsubaki, August Underground, 120 Days of Salo, and a budding form of media known as mixtapes. Mixtapes differ because they are purely, completely real footage of crimes and death. I don't feel like going down that rabbit hole in particular. My search history is fucked enough as is. The main one I remember is MD Pope, or Most Disturbed Person on Planet Earth. I think there's like 4 of those. I don't know and I don't care because it's not my thing at all. That's the best I got. Now, over the years, media has evolved. We saw the rise of television and eventually the rise of the internet. What you would once only be able to see on VHS, newspapers, or on television news now are readily accessible on the internet. Many Faces of Death were given a new medium. Over the last 30 years, we would see the rise of gore videos, cartel declarations, war footage, murders explicitly for the internet, animal abuse. Anything monstrous you can think of was right there at the click of a button on websites like LiveLeak and even mainstream websites like Facebook and YouTube. The Face of Death contorted into something bigger. I have unfortunately seen quite a bit of these images and videos. It's kind of hard not to with people who spam Discord servers with this kind of imagery, TikToks that dodge content moderation, people who skirt YouTube's TOS, which is amazing to me considering only back in 2019, 2018, wait no, that was 7, 8 years ago. Fuck me. Oh my god. Oh. I remember pre-COVID, almost every single ad I would ever see on YouTube would be either straight up porn or animals going at it. I wish I was kidding. And now it seems that YouTube is back with that, with AI porn. We've come full circle. And speaking of coming full circle, we have the new Faces of Death. This new iteration focuses on the internet age. The plot of this movie follows Dacre Montgomery, a man who wants to become internet famous, and he does so by recreating iconic scenes from the original Faces of Death, such as the electric chair, the monkey brains, the beheading, so on and so forth. Barbie Ferreira, which I'm probably butchering, I'm very sorry, is a content moderator at a TikTok clone company known as Kino, which, that was a choice. She comes across the most Dacre posts and becomes obsessed with it, wanting to bring the man behind the camera to justice. I'll get into comparing this to the legacy of the original later on, but first, how is the movie? Let's start off with the positives. First off, the actual recreations of these kills were pretty rad. They do spoil a good portion of things in the trailer, but they were pretty well executed, pun partially intended. The way this movie is shot is also really neat. I like the camera they use, and there were certain shots in this that just, so eerie. I would have liked a little more if I didn't have the stupid fucking migraine cluster heading crust or whatever my doctor said. But I liked it a lot. The music was also very befitting. I really liked it, except for the borderline, and I need you to brace yourself for this, okay? I'm going to awaken a sleeper agent in some of you. Dubstep credit song. A borderline dubstep song that samples the original Faces of Death monologue. I'm not kidding. I have not brushed up on my EDM subgenres in a long time because the era is long since passed, so I don't know what genre in particular, but it was almost dubstep. Anyway, I'm getting severely off topic here, Jesus Christ. The first half hour, 45 minutes of this movie was very intriguing and very well executed. It has incredible setup, acting here, fantastic. I love everything they're going with here. It is the best constructed part of this movie, in my opinion. Moving on to the mixed. Okay, we got a bit to talk about. Barbie and Dacre here are phenomenal actors. Everyone here is. But the dialogue they were given made me take off my glasses at multiple intervals just to mentally reset. The first half of this movie, again, has really good dialogue and characterization, but when I tell you it takes a nosedive, it falls hard. I am actively more scared of Dacre's more popular role, Billy Hargrove from Stranger Things, than I was for a second here. I've never seen Euphoria, but from what I've seen, Barbie's role is really well done. Next, we have the actual depiction of the internet. Seeing how the internet is portrayed in movies is the most infuriating thing I've ever had to bear witness to in all my years of watching movies. They do a relatively good job on the surface level, but the meta commentary becomes severely ham-fisted and just gets really over the top. And you cannot tell me half of the shit that people say in this movie regarding the videos that Dacre is posting is something real people would say outside of fucking 4chan. There's just something about the way the internet is depicted here that rubs me the wrong way. The actual technological depiction, more power to you, I've seen worse. I've seen significantly worse. At least the mouse is moving in a natural way. But the actual commentary side of it just, there's something about it. Now I do have quite a bit of negatives here. Starting off, we have Dacre Montgomery's character essentially being a cross between Billy Loomis from Scream and Kurt Gunkel from Spree. His quirks and entire presence just pissed me off in a way that I don't think the movie intended. Barbie gets way better characterization here, which I'm very glad for. She is the main character after all, but Dacre is part of this essential pairing. The dialogue in the third act had me internally writhing. Billy Hargrove calls Kat from Euphoria a cuck. I'm not kidding. Oh, this third act, let's talk about it. Oh god. Something that internet and social media horror movies often struggle with is not wearing a thematic heart on their sleeve. They always word vomit the themes rather than letting us absorb it ourselves. Every single fucking time. And it would work, but this is not a horror comedy. This works a lot more with horror comedies, again bringing up Spree. But this is not a horror comedy. We're supposed to take this a lot more seriously. Every single scene that Dacre's in, aside from the scene in the finale where he's cackling like a madman, is just so fucking goofy to me. This is also hardly an inventive film. You don't need to constantly reinvent the formula, it's virtually impossible to, and that's what makes special movies like Sinners from last year so special. But this felt like 5 different movies smashed into one. By the way, this entire segment, this entire review right here is purely as a movie separated from the Faces of Death legacy. Forgot to mention that earlier, sorry. Again, there is a point where the movie goes from something unique to something I've seen a million times before. But so long as the execution is good, I'm good with it. I'm also good with predictive elements, as long as they're executed really well, like with the Knives Out movies. Every single movie I knew exactly who the killer was almost right off rip, but the execution of it is what makes it so good. But here, Well, I wasn't a fan. I've seemed to be in the minority that just doesn't really like this movie from what I have seen. Every single problem I have with this, I also have with Cam. I wish I was kidding. I'm seeing double and it isn't just this fucking migraine. You have this really interesting plot with a very, very strong first act, and then you fumble it by putting your stats into the wrong categories. All the stats that went into the over exposition here should have gone into the gore. I was fully expecting a gore fest, or at the very least a lot more than what we got. What we do get is pretty solid, but this film was touting itself as this generation's quote-unquote rite of passage. For me, the most disturbing scene came from not the Faces of Death killings, but rather a video that is connected to Barbie's character. It's probably because I've seen numerous real videos like it, but there's a certain quality that makes it stand out amidst the rest of the movie's carnage that I believe this movie should have gone with. The videos Dacre posts should have been lower quality, should have been straight up potato quality. That's what the majority of real gore videos look like. They are rarely, if ever, 4K. They are like 2 frames per sometimes. And in my opinion, I believe that this movie should have been partly, if not entirely, found footage and or screen life. I think it would have worked better in that regard to really accentuate the grittiness of it, and also to sort of kind of harken back to the original Faces of Death. Make it feel real. That is the beauty of the original movie. I think overall, there was something strong here, but the execution was ultimately not what I think would have been the strongest way to go. Again, I seem to be in the minority here, and these are all my personal preferences. This is just the way that I think the movie should have gone. Little tweaks here and there, and there is plenty to enjoy here. I just think it fumbles what it could have been with the third act that lacks a real punch. A solid bit of this movie lacks the punch that it needs. Barbie's character and the video with her character is a very strong motivation. I really like that aspect, and they do a really, really good job with it. They build up the motivation, they have it follow through, and it is very shocking. It's really good. I like that aspect. Having a guy recreate the Faces of Death kills for internet fame is a really interesting idea if done well, but just enough was lacking to the point where it really muddied the experience for me. Now getting on to speaking about this as a successor to Faces of Death, I don't think it's fair to compare the two beyond shock factor. I think this version should have used a lot more shock factor and more grainy footage, as I mentioned earlier, similar to the original. Part of what makes the original so just eerie is the really grainy, really fucking gross footage. It feels grimy. However, these are two entirely different kinds of movies from two entirely different eras. Remaking the original Faces of Death is virtually impossible nowadays, so doing a reimagining is the best course of action here. I love the fact that this comments on modern content moderation and how we consume grim content for as heavy-handed as it is. Making this a mockumentary likely wouldn't have worked well, especially for bringing in new fans. I'm not even opposed to the direction that this movie took, being kind of a slasher. It's just the execution that really makes the movie suffer in my eyes. If it were more splatterpunk, it could have lived to the original legacy of Faces of Death and Mondo films just a little bit more, or at least more extreme horror. Even as a slasher, it's not even that strong. It's stuck in a limbo between horror genres, between pre-existing movies. I think the ultimate surmising problem is that it plays it a little too safe. There's a quality when it comes to the original Faces of Death just makes it so grim, so stomach-churning. The beginning of this movie nails that with knockoff TikTok videos showing nasty shit. Then of course there's the video tied to Barbie's character. Lean more into that. Make this an internet age Faces of Death first and foremost with a slasher backdrop. With the tagline, every generation has a rite of passage, this is yours, it sets up the precedent that this will be an intense experience. Or at least it's how my very literal-minded brain took it. I may just be stupid, I don't know. For mainstream audiences and less hardened horror fans, this will be an intense experience in some aspects. I'm not exactly sure who the intended audience here is, but I would certainly love to learn more about it. I don't hate this movie, I really don't. I can understand the reasons for certain creative decisions and certain directions. It seems to work for a lot of people, but I think it was just lackluster in certain areas, while propping up others a little more than they should have. That's just my take on it. If you have a differing opinion on it, feel free to enlighten me in the comments in a respectful manner. Don't be a jackass. Please and thank you. Thank you so much for watching here to the end. I apologize for not keeping up with videos. Life got in the way, and it's been very difficult to even look at screens with this cluster headache migraine bastard child that I apparently have. I was nauseous the entire movie, and all the panoramic shots just made my vision get all blurry. Not to mention editing this is going to be pure hell on my head. Hopefully, I'll be better soon, and my busy work should be ending alongside April, leaving May open for plenty of time for all the new releases then. I believe next week is going to have Lee Cronin's The Mummy, and Normal with Bob Odenkirk. So hopefully I'll be well enough to not only watch those, but also make a video on them. In the meantime, have a good day, stay safe, especially here on the internet, and I'll be back soon. Take care.